There seems to be growing fissures in the government of national unity, with the key partner, the DA, complaining that it's been struggling to secure face-to-face meetings with ANC leaders. This follows the ANC's NEC decision to reset the GNU, compounded by the DA blaming the ANC for the 30% tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. Let's speak about this now with political analyst Professor Stephen Friedman. Prof, a very good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for your time. Watching John Steenhuisen, the leader of the Democratic Alliance, who is also, of course, the Minister of Agriculture, at that briefing alongside Park Stau, who is the ANC Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. I couldn't help but thought about what you wrote only a few days ago about how in response to Donald Trump's attempts, to use your language or words, to bully countries by slapping high tariffs, the DA has instead been blaming the biggest party in the government of national unity, the ANC, for what has been happening.
Yeah, sure. I've been following this around the world. I can't think of another country which has been threatened with these tariffs in which the government of the country is being blamed for the tariffs, given that, it's quite clearly an exercise in bullying. We've had Brazil slapped with 50% tariffs because they're prosecuting somebody who allegedly started a coup. We've had India slapped with 25% tariffs because they buy oil from a country Trump was friendly with 2 weeks ago. And yet the government is being blamed. And more particularly, as you point out, the second biggest party in the government is blaming the biggest party in the government. And what this really shows is that we are still a very deeply divided society. Incidentally, it's not only the DA which has been taking this attitude. We've had business representatives, in effect, also blaming the government for what Trump is doing. And what that tells us is that, South Africa is deeply divided. And this pretends that it's a government of national unity, or the pretense that we're all about to go into a happy national dialogue in which we'll all say, how much we have in common with each other, is not accurate. And it's also holding us back as a country.
Now, as you say, the Trump's tariffs are, to use your words, a brand of colonialism which Cecil John Rhodes would have found too crude, close quotes. Why is it important for you that the DA doesn't criticize Trump but blames only the ANC?
Well, because it shows you that there's a section of South African society, and as I say, it's not just the DA, it's also sections of business people in the professions, etc., who in a nutshell think the West is always right. That if an African country like South Africa is bullied by the West, then it must be South Africa's fault. It can never be the West's fault. And of course, this translates into certain attitudes at home. And the attitudes at home are that people in the suburbs, who very often think of themselves as Western, are best. And people in the townships and shack settlements are inferior because they're not Western enough. So it's not only a foreign policy divide, it actually reflects the fact that, 30 years after becoming a formal democracy, we still have some of the divisions which we had before 1994.
Well, only yesterday, John Steenhuisen and several ministers and deputies who serve in the government of national unity held a briefing where, again, they restated their opposition to such policies as Triple BEE and the Expropriation Act, but do so while, of course, remaining a part of the government of national unity. Is that an issue at all, or should it be even?
Well, if this really was a government of national unity, it would be an issue, but it's not a government of national unity. It's a coalition which has been created out of convenience. The only reason this coalition survives, and probably will continue to survive is because the parties in it don't have other options. There are reasons why the DA has to remain within it. There are reasons why the ANC remains within it. And therefore, you have these deep divisions. I don't think that is necessarily a problem. But, the media conference the DA gave yesterday is, as you correctly say, interesting. Because what do they say the problems are? They say the problems are racial redress, in effect. And we are still a country in which, I can't quote your survey, but I think it's fair to say that the overwhelming majority of white people are against racial redress. The overwhelming majority of black people are in favor of it. So really the point I was trying to drive home in that column is that we need to recognize our divisions. And we don't need a national dialogue. We need some hard national bargaining, because a national dialogue assumes, look, we all want the same thing and let's discuss how to get it. A bargain says we don't all want the same thing, but we all live in the same country, and none of us are going to force the others to be any different. So how do we compromise so that we can move forward? And that's what we really need. We didn't become a democracy by pretending that everybody was on the same page in the 1990s. We became a democracy because we recognized that there were huge divisions, and that the only way to deal with those huge divisions was some tough bargaining. But we didn't make any bargains on the economy. We didn't make any bargains on how the professions were going to run. We didn't even run any bargains on cultural issues, like what we value and what we don't value. So that's the work we've got to do as a country. But you can't do that work unless you recognize that there are these deep divisions, and unless you stop pretending, that deep down we're all on the same side simply because sometimes we support the same sports team.
Well, when these two biggest parties in the GNU committed to their arrangement, central or a key focus, they said, was rebuilding the economy and making sure that we create jobs. And we're having this conversation on a day we were told by the Statistician General that the unemployment rate has edged up again to 33.2%. Can we see these two uniting in an effort to do exactly what they said they will do when they committed to this GNU arrangement, notwithstanding their, as you put it, deep divisions?
Well, there's some things they do agree on, which don't get talked about very much. I mean, they agree on the need to make government work more efficiently. They agree on the need to make state-owned enterprises work more efficiently. They even agree on relaxing some of the restrictions on business. So these are all things they agree on, which the government has been trying to deal with over the last year, etc. So, if you're looking over the next few years for a government which will keep things ticking over, as they have done in the past, with maybe some improvements in making things run better, that's possible from this government. If you're looking at a government which is really going to tackle the problems which create that low growth rate that you're talking about, that massive unemployment level that you're talking about, then one has to be a lot more skeptical. Because as I keep on saying, if we're going to deal with those problems, you have to recognize not only that we need to change, but that what you, whether you're the DA or you're white business or you're other institutions in the society, that you have to change too. It's not a case of simply pointing fingers at the government and saying, well, you scrap BEE and you scrap the Expropriation Act and then we'll grow. Because that's not going to happen. It's a case of saying, okay, we have been part of the problem and we're prepared to change part of what we're doing because we're part of the problem and we expect some change. That's what I mean by a bargain. But, that press conference of the DA yesterday, as we've said, was critical because it says, okay, we've got a low growth rate, racial redress is the problem. Well, if you speak to people on the other side of the fence, they'll tell you that what they call white monopoly capital is the problem. So we see the problem in very different ways. To pretend that we're on the same page isn't going to work. We showed in 1990 that we are capable as a society of negotiating through those very deep divisions, and we need to do that again.
I mean, if then the two of them, as you say, see the problem in different ways, can we then expect them, again, to borrow from your column, to be united enough to join in resisting what is a threat to the country, given that briefing that they held yesterday, but also the briefing that the ANC held last week following their NEC meeting?
No, they're not. They're not united on this issue. As things stand, they're not going to be united on this issue. So in a sense, at the moment, we don't so much have a government as we have a collection of ministries. So on the Trump issue, etc., the Ministry of Trade and Industry and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Durka, are controlled by ANC ministers. So in effect, the ANC ministers will deal with this problem. Okay, basic educational communications or public works or home affairs are run by DA ministers, and they'll handle their problems in a DA sort of way. So that's essentially what we're stuck with. And the point that I'm hammering home is that that can actually last quite a long time, simply keeping things together as they have been for a while. But if you want things to change dramatically and you want us to start dealing with the problem of people not having food to put on the table, then it's got to come from elsewhere, because this government is not going to come up with a plan to deal with that which the parties are going to actually agree on.
Professor Stephen Friedman, let me thank you very much for your time and insights. Really appreciate it.